Happy Father's Day. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, horror in Orlando as a terrorist attack takes 49 lives. And the finger pointing begins. Donald Trump doubles down on his proposal to ban Muslim immigrants. Democrats double down on the push for gun control, even though neither proposal would have prevented the massacre at the gay nightclub. The Bucks hold a block party to break ground for the new arena. Politicians debate whether to raise the gas tax to fix our roads. Fares and hours for the new downtown streetcar announced, but the city still has no plan for how to pay for the operating costs of the trolley. That's not going to be a problem, is it? But we start with the polls. Nationally, polls showing Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump caused renewed jitters among Republicans, even stoking some chatter about a possible convention challenge, even rumbles of a draft Scott Walker movement. One national poll found that 70% of voters now disapprove of Trump, who has seen his numbers start to drop. Here in Wisconsin, the new Marquette University law poll shows Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump in the Badger State by 9 points among likely voters. Both candidates had huge negatives. Among registered voters, 64% have an unfavorable view of Trump. Clinton is seen unfavorably by 58%. Big majorities say that neither candidate can be described as honest. Great. The Marquette poll also found former Senator Russ Feingold with a narrow lead over Republican Ron Johnson, 45% to 41%. Scott Walker's approval rating remains stuck at 39%. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, Defense Attorney Dan Adams, and a research fellow at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, Colin Roth. Colin, we'll start at you. What number jumps out at you from
Well, just the overwhelming unpopularity of the top of the ticket, which is Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. To see those types of numbers in June, months before the November election, suggests that both these candidates are very unpopular in a purple state like Wisconsin. What also strikes me is that I think just given the known quantity of these two candidates, I don't think either of those numbers are going to tick down. I think they're only going to go up. So this portends a nasty race. What also stuck out to me was that Ron Johnson and Russ Feingold were both outpolling the top of the ticket. I think if Ron Johnson is to have really any chance of winning this election come the fall, he's got to beat Donald Trump.
Okay, you have 13% saying neither of the above. Where do those voters go? Are they going to go to the Libertarian candidate, a third-party candidate? Are they going to sit home? What?
I think that's one of the great questions of this coming election. I think some will come around to Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, and I think others will choose to not vote at all.
Okay, Dan Adams, what strikes you about this?
The numbers that struck me in the poll were the enthusiasm numbers, and I think it bodes very poorly for the Republicans and great for Hillary Clinton and Feingold. You know, you just have a lot of people who, there was this huge primary, there was a big push at the end to try to unify or convince Trump to unify his party behind him. Hillary Clinton is deliberately going out trying to get Sanders people still going to the left, which is not what you expect after a primary.
But the Democrats seem to be having more success, and I hate to say this, but they seem to be having more success in healing some of their wounds and pulling together. Because this last week, I kind of sensed some backsliding on the part of Republicans. I mean, rather than moving toward the unity, the last 6 months, it's been six.
Thanks Donald Trump.
It has been 6 weeks since Donald Trump has nailed this down, and he's not any closer to unifying this party.
He keeps chopping off his nose.
Okay,
his
what do you see? This enthusiasm gap is a problem, isn't it?
And it's huge because going into the primary, the presidential primary, the Republicans clearly had the enthusiasm in the state, and again, the state of Wisconsin voted for Ted Cruz. But now we see that Donald Trump is the nominee, and so Republicans, I believe that 13% of the people who don't want to vote for anybody are predominantly Republicans in Wisconsin who are like, I cannot accept this guy. And the sad part, going to Colin's point, is that Ron Johnson will need to exceed Trump's numbers substantially. It said right now 33% of people don't know who Ron Johnson is, and the Democrats are trying to define Ron Johnson as a Trump supporter. Ron Johnson's running away from Donald Trump every chance that he can, but yet the Democrats are trying to tie those two together.
So what will be the effect? I mean, how much fallout will there be down ticket if in fact there is this lack of enthusiasm?
It is going to be enormous. Enormous. If we have people who do not decide to vote, it's only going to hurt the Republicans.
Maybe the question should be not who people will vote for, but how many people will actually stay home beyond that 13% that you're talking about. Because if neither candidate is well liked by the majority, who does that benefit for a small small turnout.
Well, that's an interesting. And this is where we're in uncharted territory, because you have obviously a vast majority of the voters who hate both of the candidates, and that's going to have some effect. So, I look back on this last week, though, and you really get a sense of the changed vibe and the renewed talk about the convention buzz. I mean, the reality is, if Republicans want to beat Hillary Clinton, they're going to have to rethink whether or not the convention is going to be a suicide pact, whether or not there's going to be some sort of a challenge. Is that crazy talk? What do you think?
Well, I think the buzz will increase, and as sympathetic as I am to that prospect, I think it's highly unlikely that the delegates will do anything that's against the wishes of the voters.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Republican Party, medical science has not perfected, a backbone transplant. So when you're invertebrate, you're pretty much stuck there. So what is your glass half full? What is your glass half empty this week? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you are first.
Well, my glass is half full because Congress will discuss and probably vote on new gun legislation tomorrow. My glass is half empty because the NRA has more clout in Washington than Jesus. So don't expect Republicans to be turning swords into plowshares anytime soon.
Yeah, is that the proposal? Michelle Lichens.
My glass is half full because Chief Flynn announced this week a plan to reduce crime in Milwaukee. It is half empty because their plan will do nothing to reduce crime unless they are allowed to pursue vehicles that try to evade the police.
Dan Adams.
Milwaukee District Attorney candidate Verona Swanigan's 2014 book of erotic poetry and racy supporting video were rediscovered this week. This is the most bizarre and entertaining local political story in years, and that alone makes it my glass half full, but my glass is half empty because now that Swanigan is a discredited candidate, there appears there will be no serious discussion about public safety, surging crime, or the John Doe investigation in the district attorney campaign.
Yeah, you read the whole book, didn't you? Colin Ross.
My glass is half empty because every single tragedy seems to drive us as a country further apart, but it's half full because even in tragedy, like the one in Orlando, there are still incredible acts of charity, generosity, and genuine heroism.
Well, we're on the same wavelength here. My glass is half full because tragedy often brings out the best in Americans, and we saw it again this week. The first responders in Orlando, the doctors, the nurses, the thousands of people who donated blood. It's half empty because these days tragedy also brings out the worst, including attempts to exploit that horror for partisan political advantage. Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows the Republican National Convention begins in 29 days. The Democratic National Convention is 36 days away. And the presidential election is 142 days from now. We will be right back. Remember when 9/11 brought Americans together? Well, that seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? In the wake of the Orlando attack, politicians quickly retreated to their corners. Donald Trump pushing a ban on Muslim immigration, Democrats pushing for more gun control. Democrats pushed hard for laws that would ban anyone on a terror watch list from being able to buy guns, a move resisted by the NRA and their allies. So here you have this question, due process versus public safety. Where should they strike the balance? Dan Adams.
Well, right now I think the balance is way on the side of liberty and the ability to own any type of gun seemingly that you want.
Should you be able to ban guns for people on a terror watch list?
Well, no, I think that, this terror watch list, it's kind of an Orwellian idea that they're going to find you based on your internet search stuff and whatnot. Then you're going to go to a store, they're going to deny you.
That's what you guys want,
No,
right?
I think there needs to be mandatory insurance on if you're going to buy a certain type of gun, maybe restrict magazine capacity. But this terror watch list idea, it really is an Orwellian idea.
Okay. So you're with the NRA on this? Because you have the NRA talking point on that,
I
right?
think we need to have comprehensive.
Well, it's with the ACLU, too.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's the point, that the ACLU is also against this. And I think the reality is the terror watch list, the no-fly list, these are lists that nobody knows how you get on them, nobody knows how you get off them, and nobody knows why you're on them.
Okay, but Michael Holt, it makes sense on a visceral level that if you are suspected of being a terrorist, if the FBI thinks you might be a terrorist, that you should not be able to go out and buy powerful weapons. Doesn't that make sense on some level?
On some level it does, particularly now in light of Orlando, etc. And the possibility that this goon could have been at least detained or under watch had they followed through on some of the tips. But I tend to agree that we do need to do something about some of these AR-15s. I own guns. Nobody's going to take my guns from me. I don't own an AR-15. I had one in Vietnam, so I know what they can do. I went to a gun range in Jackson, and there were all these guys with these automatic weapons shooting. And I asked the one guy what it was for, and he said, terrorism. Like they're going to invade Jackson? I mean, give me a break. Do you need a 100-round clip to shoot a deer?
Well, you can't even buy an automatic weapon.
Yeah, these aren't.
You can't.
You can convert them very easily.
But you can't buy one. It takes a long time to get there. Even Russ Feingold is not out there saying he really wants to support this right now because he knows that they are erring in the wrong direction of this government, you know, putting names on lists where you can't do anything about it. So I think they are going to find a way to say that these individuals, if they want to buy a firearm, that, you know, it has to go in front of a judge before you can say no.
Well, yeah, that's due process. Okay, what is really frustrating to me is that we're talking about something that is really in many ways pointless, because this would not have stopped us. This guy would have passed any background check. Why are we not debating the absolute failure of the system to be able to target this guy? Here was somebody who was interviewed by the FBI on 3 occasions. The Wall Street Journal reported in detail on Friday all of the red flags. You have the owner of the gun shop saying that, you know, when he came in, he wanted to buy body armor. When they wouldn't sell him body armor, he was agitated. He made a phone call to somebody, and then he asked about high levels of ammunition, and they called the FBI. You know, we have been told for years that we're supposed to do this, right? So you had people, you had coworkers, you had people who had known him. People were not surprised when it turned out he was a terrorist. So my question is the system broken? Was there a systemic failure? What are we concerned about being Islamophobic? Was it a political agenda? Is it political correctness? Because I mean, it's exactly awfully disturbing that this guy was on their radar screen.
But if we followed some of these programs, these arbitrary programs, Martin Luther King would have been executed. They had him listed as a communist. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Okay, we're not talking about Martin Luther King.
What I'm saying is, though, like, if you give some individuals too much power, there's always the possibility.
But on the other hand, when you have credible information, this guy was talking about this. This guy was making threats. This guy was, he was a domestic abuser. At some point, there was something in the system that failed. I'm not buying the FBI's explanation here. And then the question is, how can we know that they are going to keep us safe from the next attacker if they fail?
I don't feel very safe right now. I believe, honestly, the reason the FBI did not pursue him more because they did not have anything specifically concrete, and he was Muslim.
Well, I think that the fact that we are talking about the gun control is frankly a changing of the subject from what we ought to be talking about, which is the threat of the terrorism. You may not want to hear it, but we will tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt, you are first.
Well, mine is Reince Priebus and Paul Ryan. Donald Trump is going to destroy the GOP. Not that I really care. So you should do whatever to circumvent his candidacy. Change convention rules, pray for divine intervention, do something before Charlie pulls out the rest of his hair.
Oh, that's good. Michelle.
To everyone today, hug your dad. Call your dad, and if you no longer have a dad, hug someone else's dad or someone who was like your dad and say thank you. We don't say thank you enough to dads for doing their hard work of providing for their families.
Dan Adams.
Well, my advice is for the Milwaukee Common Council. Adopt the proposed new flag to replace our city's current 1954 flag. The new flag is a great design and is a symbol the entire city could rally behind.
Colin Roth.
My advice is for elected Republicans who have endorsed Donald Trump. No comment isn't going to cut it for each and every silly statement he makes.
Well, after this week, it should be obvious that Donald Trump is not going to change and he's not going to grow or grow up. My advice to Republicans, the Republican convention does not have to be the suicide pact. If you really want to beat Hillary Clinton, free the delegates and dump Trump in Cleveland. Next on Sunday Insight, we know who will pay to fix our roads, but how will we pay for it? Is it time to raise the gas tax? Legislators won't be working on a new budget until next year, but there's already a lot of talk among Republicans that it's time to raise more revenue to fix the state's roads. There appears to be a coordinated campaign to build support for an increase in the gas tax or vehicle registrations. One big problem, though, Governor Scott Walker says he's not going along, saying the state should look for ways to cut spending before jacking the tax. Is he right? Michelle Litchens.
Well, of course we should look for ways to reduce spending. They put something in the budget this year. There was an audit done on the DOT to find ways to, reduce waste and, squeeze every penny out of every dollar that they're spending there. But the governor also proposed this year to spend $1.3 billion of borrowed money. We cannot continue borrowing money. 20 cents of every dollar in DOT right now is going to debt service. That's not responsible. And so, as I have here, we are purchasing 50 million gallons less of gasoline right now than we were 10 years ago. Our cars are far more fuel efficient. We are paying less in gas tax today than we were 10 years ago because we have more fuel efficient
So what
cars.
should we do about it? Raise the gas tax or replace the gas tax?
I think we actually have to do both. I think we have to increase some revenue to the state. We have to find some ways that we can save some spending in DOT. We have to use our dollars more wisely, but we cannot borrow our way to fixing our roads.
No. Don't raise it. Gas has gone up 50 cents a gallon in the last 6 weeks. You know, Wisconsin has one of the highest gas taxes in the country. So let's move beyond that. If you want to come up with some more money, it's there. Stop letting these road builders, you know.
Show me where it is.
$700 million that they overcharging, underestimates of work. I mean, $700 million, and y'all keep approving it?
Well, it is true that road builders are among the most influential lobbies in the state.
Yeah, among Democrats and Republicans. And everyone likes good roads. Everyone likes quality roads.
They are important economically.
Sure, absolutely. And I think anecdotally, a lot of us have seen some of the hang-ups with various construction projects and the delays that are happening. But I think this requires a creative solution. I think there's a possibility that a gas tax increase may be a last resort, but I think you could pair it with something like the minimum markup, and so that there would still be a net savings to gas price buyers or gas buyers for their cars. I think there's some other creative ideas, repealing prevailing wage for state projects as well.
Well, Michelle and I don't agree on a whole lot of things. I tend to agree with Michelle's views on this. I mean, we have Scott Walker, who's supposed to be Mr. Fiscal Conservative, who's borrowing more and more money just to put it into road projects, and we still have these shortfalls. We do need a mixed revenue bag that should include, I'm going to say it, toll roads. We need toll roads. We probably need some better indexing on gas prices. I mean, the math doesn't...
Toll roads should not be the third rail in politics, because actually it's a market mechanism.
It's a market mechanism, absolutely.
And this is something that actually, a lot of conservatives around the country have embraced. On the other hand, I do think that the Department of Transportation is going to have to prove that it does not waste money, that we don't have excessive roundabouts, and of course it doesn't help when we're blowing $100 million on a completely useless downtown trolley, which is something different. But what is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
What I don't get is President Obama visited the site of the Orlando terrorist attack, his 10th such visit during his term. What I don't get is, what can we do to ensure there's not an 11th visit during the president's last 6 months?
Michelle Litchins.
Charlie, I don't get why people are harassing the parents of the child that was killed by an alligator in Florida. I can't imagine their pain right now and the remorse they feel for going in the water. So let them mourn the loss of their child in peace.
Yeah, man. Dan Adams.
I don't get how Russ Feingold and Donald Trump share a common platform on international trade. Both men oppose trade agreements that help America export goods and create jobs. Senator Feingold, you're in bad company.
Colin Roth.
When someone attacks our way of life, as occurred in Orlando, is it too much to ask for politicians to avoid advocating curtailing our constitutional rights?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. Well, we've been told that if we see something, to say something. It turns out a lot of people did just that with the Orlando terrorists, and yet the FBI missed all of those warning signs. What I don't get is how that happened, and how we're ever supposed to trust that they'll prevent the next attack, because there will be one. Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It is time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you are first.
My losers, black parents, if you don't take your kids to the Brewers annual Negro League tribute game this Saturday, 3 members of the Negro League fraternity will be inducted, including the oldest living member, who's 102 years old. My winner, former Mayor Marvin Pratt. Silver Springs Elementary School will be named after Mayor Pratt this fall. It's a well-deserved honor for a great man and a good brother.
Michelle Litchins.
And happy Father's Day.
My winners are all of the police officers, first responders, and doctors who work courageously to save the lives of the Pulse nightclub victims in Orlando. We can't say thank you enough. Unfortunately, the losers are the taxpayers of the Racine Unified School District, because their union-dominated school board voted to increase their debt $1.7 million in order to give teachers a raise based on seniority, just like the unions want.
Dan Adams.
My winner is Milwaukee County Transit System bus driver Sharon Chambers, who saw a 15-year-old girl in tears being pursued by a man who tried to pull her into his car. Ms. Chambers jumped into action, providing sanctuary and kindness to the girl. My losers, State Representative Mandela Barnes and Jesse Kremer, who used the Orlando mass shooting as an excuse to spew over-the-top partisan vitriol. Mr. Barnes and Mr. Kremer, have some class.
Colin Roth.
Our winners this week are those celebrating Juneteenth, the holiday that commemorates the end of slavery. This is an important holiday, and Milwaukee is one of the oldest celebrations in the country. My losers are the 25 to 34-year-olds who live with their parents. According to Pew Research, Americans in their late 20s and early 30s are living with their parents at record levels. Not good at all.
Well, my losers, voters, again. New poll finds big majorities of voters dislike both candidates for president, which means that most of them will either have to hold their noses or sit this one out. Sad. Winner, all of you fathers out there and those of you who are lucky enough to still have your dads. Give them a hug, or if that's just too much for you guys, just a punch in the shoulder and tell them thanks, Dad. Thanks for joining me and joining me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.